This is the key to test 1, and in the first 10 or 11 problems, you're asked to factor completely. And so number 1, we have this polynomial, 12x squared minus 18x. Now this is not a difficult one. Basically, remember, to factor polynomial, the first thing you have to do is look for the greatest common factor. And so if you look at 12 and negative 18, the GCF for 12 and negative 18 is going to be 6. And then notice there are variables in the variable x in both terms. So I have 2 factors of x in this term, and I have 1 factor of x here. So I'm going to use 1 factor of x. So the GCF is 6x. And so once you find the GCF, then you're going to rewrite this polynomial as a product. So that's what we mean by factors. You're going to write these as factors. And so I get 6x times, and then just use the idea of the distributive property. 6x times 2x is 12x squared, and then 6x times a negative 3 is a negative 18x. So remember, factor completely. So you basically wrote this as this right here as a product of factors. 6 times x times 2x minus 3. All right, and so those factors don't you can't factor them any further. So that's number 1. Number 2, we have this for number 2. We have x squared minus x minus 20. Again, this is the easy kind because the coefficient of x squared is 1. And so we're going to, oh, and by the way, the GCF is 1. Just make sure you see that. The GCF is 1. So I'm going to go directly to the 2 binomials. And so remember, the last sign's negative, so that means these signs in here are going to be different. And the larger of the out and the inner will take that negative sign, the middle sign. So x times x, let's go ahead and try 5 and 4. So 5 and 4 is going to work. And for the one, remember, one's negative, one's positive. The one that's going to be negative will be the 5. So we get negative 5, positive 4. And always check. Don't go any further without checking. You FOIL this out. X times x is x squared. A negative 5 times a positive 4 is a negative 20. The outer is 4x. The inner is a negative 5x. When I add them up, I get negative x. So that's number 2. Number 3, we have 9y squared plus 50y minus 24. All right, so 9y squared plus 50y minus 24. Okay, so the GCF here is 1 as well. So the GCF is 1. So I'm going to go directly to the 2 binomials. And let's just try. And so what some of you probably did was you tried 3 and 3. All right, so let's try 3y and 3y, see what happens. And again, notice the last sign is negative, so these signs in here are going to be different. One positive, one negative. And for 24, let's try, if you try, now here's the issue. So for 24, you're probably going to say, well, I'm going to try 8 and 3. Okay, well, here's the problem. If you try 8 and 3, no matter where you put the 3, you could factor out at 3. So you know, if you use 3y and 3y, you cannot use this. Same thing if you try 6 and 4. So if I try 6 and 4, same thing for 6. No matter where you put the 6, you could factor out at 3, which means that all of these are divisible by 3, and 50 is not divisible by 3. So what that means then is probably this. And there's some other factors of 24. 12 times 2. Again, you can't use this either, because no matter where you put the 12, I could factor out at 3. So that kind of means this then. That kind of means, well, I cannot say 3y and 3y. I'm probably going to have to say 9y and y. All right, so let's try that. So that's the thinking that you had to go through based on our lessons from the course. So we have 9y and y. All right, let's try 8 and 3. Okay, let's actually remember let's do our the kind of the rule that we talked about. If we the numbers we choose first will be the ones close together in the number line. So let's try 6 and 4 instead. See what happens. Okay, so let's talk about 6 and 4. You know you will not be able to put the 6 here, because you put the 6 here, that means you can factor out at 3, which means all of these are divisible by 3. 50 is not. So you know if you're going to try 6 and 4, then you'll put the 6 here, the 4 there. Okay? And then And then let's go ahead now and look at the signs. All right, the last sign's negative, which means these signs in here are different. And I want you to remember this. The outer is 54y. The inner is 4y. And remember, the signs are different, right? Meaning that one's negative, one's positive. So that means you can subtract those. When I subtract those, I get 50y. All right, now let's talk about the sign, which is what I want. I want this to be a positive 50y, though. So that means that 54 has to be positive and 4y has to be negative. So that means this is negative, this is positive. And always check. 9y times y is 9y squared. A negative 4 times a positive 6, a negative 24. The outer is a positive 54y. The inner is a negative 4y. When you add them up, you get 50y. So the answer for that one will be 9y minus 4 times y plus 6. All right, number 4. So number 4, we have 2x squared minus 7x minus 30. All right, so 2x squared minus 7x minus 30. So again, the GCF is 1. The GCF is 1. So I'm going to go directly to the two binomials. This time 2x squared, there's only one possibility for 2x squared, and that's 2x and x. The last sign is negative, so that means these signs in here are going to be different, one positive, one negative. But let's talk about 30. There are several possibilities of 30. There's 10 times 3. There is 2 times 15. There's 6 times 5, right? And then there's 30 times 1, obviously. All right. So let's try. Let's see. Let's go ahead and try 6 and 5 first, since our rule is to use the ones close together in the number line. All right. If I try 6 and 5, I want you to remember this. We talked about this. If I try 6 and 5, I know I cannot put the 6 here because that means I could factor out a 2. See, if I put the 6 there, I want you to notice, see, those two both have 2 in common. So I could factor out a 2, which means that all of these are divisible by 2 and 7's not. So I know I cannot put the 6 there. So it means if I'm going to try 6 and 5 first, then I'd put the 6 here and the 5 there. And then let's see what happens. The last sign's negative. The last sign's negative. That means these signs are different. And I want the outer and the inner to add up to be negative 7x. So let's talk about the outer. The outer is 12x. The inner is 5x. The signs are different. So I know I'm going to be subtracting those, not adding, but subtracting. When I subtract, I do get 7x, which is what I want. But I want a negative 7x. In order to get a negative 7x, that means this has to be negative, this has to be positive, which means the 6 is negative, the 5 is positive. And always check before you go on. 2x times x is 2x squared. A positive 5 times a negative 6 is a negative 30. The outer is a negative 12x. The inner is a positive 5x. When you add them up, you get negative 7x, and that's what you wanted. So the answer to that one is 2x plus 5 times x minus 6. All right. Number 5. Let's talk about number 5. We have, all right, so we have this in number 5. We have 3x squared minus 14x plus 8. So 3x squared minus 14x plus 8. And so if, again, the GCF is 1. And so if I go ahead and factor this as two binomials, I get 3x, x. Now this is an easy kind because the last sign's positive. So that means both of those are going to be the same sign, and they're both going to be negative. And 8, there's not many possibilities for 8. There's just 4 and 2. 4 times 2 is 8, and then 8 times 1. All right, so let's try 4 and 2. And so the one that's going to work will be where this is the 4 and this is the 2. And then let's check. 3x times x is 3x squared. A negative 2 times a negative 4 is a positive 8. The outer is a negative 12x. The inner is a negative 2x. And when you add them up, you get negative 14x, which is what you wanted. So that's the answer. Number 6. Number 6, we have this. We have 4x squared minus 22x plus 10. So 4x squared minus 22x plus 10. All right, now, again, notice the GCF is 2. So you got to factor out the GCF. And so when I factor out the GCF, I get 2 times 2x squared minus 11x plus 5. All right, so remember, you got to factor out the GCF. Now let's go off to the side and kind of figure out what this is. So that's going to be 2 times, and let's do the two binomials here. So for 2x squared, there's only one possibility, 2x and x, and the last sign's positive here. So that means that these signs in here are the same. They're both negative. And there's only one possibility for 5, and that's 5 and 1. And it looks like the 5 has to go here, the 1 has to go there. And then let's check. 2x times x, 2x squared. A negative 1 times a negative 5, a positive 5. The outer is a negative 10x. The inner is a negative 1x. You get a negative 11x. All right. Now don't forget. Remember, if you say that's the answer, that's incorrect, because that's a factorization for this trinomial. Remember, you're factoring the original trinomial, which is this. So don't forget about the GCF. All right. So this factorization has three factors: 2, 2x minus 1, and x minus 5. Number 7. Number 7, we have 20d cubed plus 36d squared minus 8d. All right, so 20d cubed plus 36d squared minus 8d. And so for that one, it looks like the GCF is going to be 4d. So the GCF is 4d. And so if I factor out a 4d, I get 4d times 5d squared. 4d times 5d squared is 20d cubed. Plus 4 times 9 is 36. D times d is d squared. So 4d times 9d is 36d squared. And then and then 4d times a negative 2 is a negative 8d. All right? And so we're going to get 4d, and then the two binomials. This one's an easy one because 5's prime and 2 is prime as well. So we get 5d, d, and it looks like the 2 is going to go here, the 1's going to go here. The last sign is negative, so 1 has to be negative. It looks like the one that's going to be negative is this one, and this one's positive. So let's check it. 5d times d, 5d squared. A negative 1 times a positive 2, negative 2. The outer is 10d. The inner is negative 1d. When I add them up, I get positive 9d. So there's your answer. Okay, number 8. Number 8, we have 27a squared minus 12ab plus b squared. All right, so notice the two variables, and the GCF is 1 here. So the GCF is 1. So we go directly to the two binomials. And for 27, let's try 9 and 3. So 9a, 3a. And there's only one possibility for b, and that's b and b, right? The last sign's positive, so that means these signs in here are the same. They're both negative. Now let's check. Let's see if this works. 9a times 3a is 27a squared. A negative b times a negative b is a positive b. The outer is 9ab. The inner is a negative 3ab. And when I add them up, I get a negative 12ab. So that's correct. So that's the answer for number 8. Number 9. In number 9, we have this. For number 9, let's see. We have 4x squared minus 11xy minus 3y squared. All right. So again, two variables. The GCF is 1. So let's go directly to the two binomials. And for that one, let's try 4x and x. I think that's the one that's going to work. So let's do 4x and x. And for 3y, there's only one possibility, 3y and y. And it looks like 3y is going to go here, y is going to go there. And the last sign's negative. These signs are different. So notice the outer is 12xy. The inner is 1xy. And signs are different, right? So that means you're going to be subtracting those. When I subtract 1 from 12, I get 11. But I want it to be negative 11xy. So that means the 12 has to be negative. The 1 has to be positive. And in order for that to happen, this has to be negative. This has to be positive. All right, let's check it, though, before you go on. 4x times x, 4x squared. A positive y times a negative 3y, negative 3y squared. The outer, 4x times a negative 3y is a negative 12xy. Y times x is a positive 1xy. Add them up, you get negative 11xy, which is what you wanted. All right, number 10. Number 10, we have 81y squared minus 49. Now that one's an easy one. That's a difference of two squares. And again, the GCF here is 1. So we're going to go ahead and just factor this as 9y minus 7, 9y plus 7. All right, and then always check. 9y times 9y is 81y squared. A negative 7 times a positive 7 is a negative 49. The outer is a negative 63y. The inner, is a positive 63y. The inner is a negative 63y. When you add them up, you get 0, which you don't have a y term. So that's the answer. 11. Okay, so 11, you have 8x cubed minus 27. So here you have to use the fact that this is the difference of two cubes. But again, the GCF is 1. And remember, the difference of two cubes, the formula for the difference of two cubes is a binomial, f minus L, times a trinomial, f squared, plus FL, plus L squared. And so before you go on, it's a good idea to find out what f and L would be. So that's filling in this information here. So 2x times itself 3 times is 8x cubed. 3 times itself 3 times is 27. So this is your f, and this is your L. And so it's just a matter of you taking f and L and plugging it back into your formula. So you're going to get f minus L, so 2x minus 3, times, now remember, f squared is f times f, and f here is 2x, so 2x times 2x is 4x squared. Plus, then this says I take the product of f and L, so 2x times 3 is 6x. And then this says I take L and I square it, so 3 times 3 is 9. And plus 9. And so there's your answer. All right, so that's number 11. Okay, so number 12, though, is where you had to start showing work, number 12. So number 12, you have this equation, 7x squared minus 48x minus 7 equals 0. And you want to solve this equation by factoring. All right, so if I'm going to solve this by factoring, you got to make sure, first of all, that all the terms on one side and zeros on the other, because you want to use the zero factor property. The GCF here is 1. GCF is 1, so I'm going to go directly to the two binomials. So 7x x, and then it looks like 7 is going to go here. You're not going to put 7 here, because if you put 7 here, you could factor out a 7, which means that all of these are divisible by 7 and 48's not. And then 1 goes here. The last sign's negative. Last sign's negative, so that means these signs are different, and the one that works will be this is a negative, this is a positive. And always check. 7x times x, 7x squared. A positive 1 times a negative 7, a negative 7. The outer's a negative 49x. The inner's a positive 1x. You get negative 48x. Now remember, though, you got to say equals 0. You must say that. All right, then you have to show, now remember, the zero factor property says that when you have two or more factors whose product is 0, then one of these has to be 0. So you have to show 7x plus 1 equals 0, x minus 7 equals 0. All right, that was mentioned many times. And so you're going from a quadratic equation to two linear. So you get 7x equal negative 1. Divide both sides by 7. One of your solutions is negative 1/7. The other one, so you add 7 to both sides. The other solution is 7. All right, so that's number 12. Number 13, you have 8x squared plus 10x equal 7. Okay, so the difference between these two is that this was already in that standard form where you had 0 on the other side. This is not. So you had to bring that 7 over first. So I get 8x squared plus 10x minus 7 equals 0. And then you go ahead and the GCF is 1 here, so then you go ahead and you factor. Don't forget, you got to say equals 0. And so let's try 4x and 2x. 4x times 2x is 8x squared. And for 7, the only possibility for 7 is 7 and 1. And it looks like the 7 is going to go here, the 1's going to go here. The last sign's negative. These signs are different. And I want the the middle term to be a positive 10x. So turns out that in order for the outer and the inner to add up to be a positive 10x, that means that 7 has to be positive, 1 has to be negative. And always check. 4x times 2x, 8x squared. Positive 7 times a negative 1, a negative 7. The outer is a negative 4x. The inner is a positive 14x. When you add them up, you get 10x. Now at that point is where you set each of those equal to 0 because you have two factors whose product is 0. So according to the 0 factor property, one must be 0. One of those must be 0. All right, so you had to show that. You had to show this. And then you can go, now many of you can go from here to the solution. But basically you're saying 4x equal negative 7, divide both sides by 4, and you get x to be negative 7/4. There's one of them. Over here, add 1 to both sides. You get 2x equal 1. Divide both sides by 2. You get x to be 1/2. All right, so that was number 13. Okay, let's look at 14. So 14, you had, all right, so this is where, let me go ahead and write it and kind of tell you what the direction says. Okay, so this is where you're given the rational expression, you have to simplify. So you want to simplify this. And so remember, the first thing you're going to do when simplifying a rational expression is to factor the numerator, factor the denominator. So when I factor the numerator, and remember, it said show work, so you have to show this part. You're going to get 3x, x. For 4, let's try 4 and 1. Looks like the 4 is going to go here, the 1's going to go there. This is going to be positive, this is going to be negative, and always check. 3x times x, 3x squared. Negative 1 times a positive 4, negative 4. The outer is 12x, the inner is a negative 1x. When I add them up, I get positive 11x. In the denominator, you're going to factor out a 5, so I get 5 times 3x minus 1. 5 times 3x is 15x. 5 times a negative 1 is a negative 5. So the first thing you did was factor. Then you got to show, and I mentioned this many times, you have to show what you're reducing. So I even sent an email out about that. So you got to show that these two are dividing out. So the answer then will be x plus 4 divided by 5. All right, so that's number 14. 15, we have another rational expression. So you want to simplify this. So x squared plus 6x minus 27 divided by x squared plus 4x minus 21. So you want to simplify this rational expression. Same thing, you're going to factor the numerator and the denominator. Both of those have a GCF of 1. So you're going to go directly to the two binomials in both cases. All right. So in the numerator, it looks like you can factor this as x times x. The last sign's negative, so you know one's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. And for 27 and you want 6, that means I'm going to use 9 and 3. And the 9 is going to be positive, the 3 is going to be negative. And so check. X times x, x squared. A positive 9 times a negative 3, a negative 27. The outer is a negative 3x. The inner is a positive 9x. When you add them up, you get 6x. The denominator, so let's see, that's going to be 7 and 3. And it looks like the 7 is going to be positive, the 3 is going to be negative. And again, always check. X times x, x squared. A positive 7 times a negative 3 is a negative 21. The outer is a negative 3x. The inner is a positive 7x. When you add them up, you get 4x. And again, now you got to show this, though. You must show that both of those are dividing out, and you're left with factors of 1s. And so now the answer is x plus 9 divided by x plus 7. Okay, 16. All right, so 16, same thing. You're going to simplify this rational expression. You have a squared minus 25 divided by a squared plus 7a plus 10. All right, so the numerator is the difference of two squares. So I'm going to factor this as a minus 5, a plus 5. The denominator I can factor as, that's an easy one because they're all positive signs. I can factor this as, let's see, 5 and 2. So a plus 5, a plus 5, a plus 2. So a times a is a squared. 5 times 2 is 10. The outer is 2a. The inner is 5a. You get 7a. And then just reduce. So it looks like I can reduce these. And you get a minus 5 divided by a plus 2. All right, so that's number 16. Okay, now number 17 and I think 18 as well. Yeah. So 17 and 18 is where you wanted to multiply. So it's going to say multiply. So that's where you want to multiply two rational expressions. So this is number 17. You have x squared divided by x squared minus 49 times, and then x squared minus 16x plus 63 divided by x squared minus 9x. All right. So you're multiplying these two rational expressions, and again, the first thing you're going to do is to factor all the numerators and factor all the denominators. So this is a monomial in the numerator here, so I'm going to leave that alone. I can factor the difference of two squares here, so it'll be x minus 7, x plus 7, times, and over here, let's go ahead and quickly do this, and this one's easy, so I can factor out an x here, so it'll be x times x minus 9. And in the numerator, let's see, that's going to be x times x, the last sign's positive, so these signs are the same, they're both going to be negative. And let's try 9 and 6. So 9 and, 9 and, let's see, 7. So let's try 9 and 7. And, okay, now let's go ahead and reduce. So the first factor you see is an x. I can reduce it with this x. So remember, divide those out. You got to show that. The next factor is x minus 9. I can reduce it with this one, just like this. The next factor is x minus 7. I can reduce it with this one. And that's about it. So you're going to get 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times x plus 7 times 1 is x plus 7. So there's your answer. All right. Number 18, again, you're multiplying two rational expressions. And you get x squared plus 12x plus 36 divided by x squared plus 14x plus 48 times x squared plus 8x divided by x squared plus 2x minus 24. Okay, so here this polynomial in the numerator, the GCF is 1, this GCF is 1. Here you can factor out an x, so the GCF here is x, and this is 1. So let's go ahead and factor each of those. So let's see, for that one in the numerator, it looks like it'll be x, x, and then let's try 9 and 4. So x plus 9, x plus 4, that's going to work. So that's going to give us this. The outer is 4x, the inner is oops, sorry, that won't work. All right, because that's going to give us 9x and 4x is 13x, and I want 12x. Let me make sure I wrote the problem correctly, and I did. Okay, so that means then let's try 6 and 6. So let's write it here. So x plus 6, x plus 6. And yep, that's going to work. So this is going to work this time because x times x is x squared. 6 times 6 is 36. The outer 6x, the inner 6x, and you get 12x. For the denominator, let's go ahead and try x times x. For 48, let's go ahead and try. Okay, and so for the denominator, it looks like it will be x plus 6 and x plus 8. Plus 8. All right, in the numerator here, I can factor out an x. So I'm going to get x times x plus 8. In the denominator, looks like I can, let's see, for that one, that's going to be negative. So these signs have to be different. And I need the outer and the inner to add up to be a 2x. So it looks like it'll be 6 and 4. And it looks like 6 is going to be positive and 4 is going to be negative. Okay? And so now let's go ahead and reduce the common factors. I have an x plus 6 here. I see one down there. In fact, there are two of them. It does not matter which one I use. If I use this one, you can. The next one's x plus 6, an x factor. I see one down here again, so I can divide those out. The next factor is an x. There's no factor occurring as an x down there. The next factor is x plus 8. I can divide those out. And so now I'm going to get 1 times x times 1 is x. 1 times 1 times 1 times x minus 4 is x minus 4. And so that's what we get. And it looks like that is the 18 problems. So you had 18 problems in this test. So this is the key to test number 1. Okay.